the COEH meeting for February. So the first order of business is I hope everyone's had a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting. And could I have a motion to accept those minutes?
This is Shane. I'll make
a motion. Oh, sorry.
Well, we need a second.
What? Well, I'll make the motion, and I guess Shane can do the second.
That sounds good. I'll do the second.
Okay, thank you, guys. Okay, so I guess Sharika, you're up first, right? With a couple of items here.
Yes, I'll be going over the 2024-2025 funding for ESG. So our application process has ended and we have received our funding recommendation from the rating panel. And this is the recommendation that is being brought forth for the commission to approve. So we have a current funding. So in the yellow, you will see the current funding for FY23, FY24. And we have Bethesda Center, who we are currently funding their men's shelter. They have applied for the women's shelter this year. We were funding the women's shelter up until 2020, 2021. There was some changes in staff and it kind of just stopped. It stopped being requested, but that looks like it's back online with a request. They have decided after COVID to continue to do street outreach. So there was a funding application submitted for street outreach. That was previously funded through COVID funds. City with Dwellings submitted an application for street outreach. Family Services, Salvation Army and Samaritan Ministry also submitted applications for their emergency shelters. We do have where it says unknown for our overflow shelter. Our overflow shelter is usually done during the winter months, so between December and March, and that is to provide shelter during the cold months. We have unknown in that category because at this point in time, we don't know who will be operating that, and we're hoping to have an operator in the midst of doing our winter shelter plan. Our ESG funds, only 60% of these funds can be used for shelter. These are one of the only pots of funds that we receive for emergency shelter and street outreach services. So we try to prioritize these funds for those purposes. For rapid rehousing and data coordination, there is a larger emphasis placed on data through HUD. So last year, a lot of the agencies applied for data coordinators to assist them with inputting their information into the HMIS system, which is the system that tracks the individuals that we're serving. So we have United Way, who is doing our rapid rehousing. So they're cutting the checks for the temporary financial assistance. So they're receiving money, they're requesting money for that and data coordination. Positive Wellness Alliance is requesting a rapid rehousing case manager, which will provide case management services to persons living with HIV and AIDS. ESR, you will see that they receive funding sources for shelter as well as for a data coordinator. That there is no request for this 24-25 year. The City of Winston-Salem, we are requesting HMIS services. June 30th, we will possibly be taking on the CES system. With that, we would need additional data coordination in order to complete that. The CES is the triage part of when you come into the Homeless Services Hub. So where you get your intake and assessment and things of that nature done. And then it's last is Bethesda Center, who requested for their data coordinator to be funded again for the 24-25 year. You would see that the shelter max is below the 60% requirement, or it meets that threshold, and that we have an average of $27,797 for 8 agencies this year. compared to 6 agencies last year at $38,458. So we did, well, increase, not agencies, but programs. We did increase our programs by 2, adding 2 new additional programs online. I can answer any questions, if there's any questions, before putting a motion forward for this.
Sharika, this is Jay. I just have a quick question. For row 15, what did you say? I missed what you said about the city participating in maybe a different way in the community intake center, or what is that piece?
So with the community intake center, there's currently an RFP out for the community intake center. United Way, as of June 30th, will no longer be operating it. So there will be a need for additional staff to operate the community intake center. This is one of the data pieces that is required for the community intake center's operations that the city will have to assist with as of July 1st.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Hey, Sharika, it's Krista. Pardon me because I'm new here. So if this is a dumb question, please excuse it. I know we're looking at FY24 funding in terms of the recommendation, but when I was looking at column G, the row 11, the 230,749, that's the shelter outreach subtotal. I'm having a hard time figuring out how the rows above it add up to 230. So is there a line hidden or something I'm missing?
I'm checking the math, Krista.
Okay.
Was that it for you, Sharika, or did you have something else? Or is she frozen?
I think she was checking the numbers.
Okay. There we go.
So it comes out to 209,849. I don't know if when I copied it from the sheet into another one, if it messed up the numbers.
Numbers and similar songs on Amazon.
And so are we, we're currently in FY 24, right? So we're discussing is the allocation for FY 25.
Yes, that is correct. The FY 24-25, which is starts July 1st and goes until June 30th of 2025.
So Sharika, the total that the first total we do is just matches last year, right? To wait and
Yes,
see.
so we use the amounts from the previous years to determine what our funding may be. We don't know what our funding actually is yet.
Right.
Because we're just applying for the money. So what we do is use what we received last year as a baseline for what we may receive this year. So last year for let's see. Sorry, I'm only working off a laptop instead of two screens. So last year we received 181,649 in city ESG and 211,889 in state ESG. So we are going off of those same exact numbers.
Okay. Okay, so did anybody have any questions on the way it was broken out? I think there was some new projects there and some old projects that were reduced a little bit.
So that catch didn't affect anything about what we're recommending. That just reflected a change in what last year's numbers were. So
Yes, so it the sales for last year didn't add up when we copied it over to another sheet. But this is the original sheet, and these are just the numbers from last year combined. So this is all of the ESG funding for 2023. This is the ESG funding broken up for 2024, 2025.
And when we apply, do we generally get what we apply for? Or sometimes they cut us, sometimes they give us more, just never know.
You never know. So you never know. Sometimes it's a few thousand lower, sometimes it raises, but it's never increased by more than $2,000. So the recommendation for the rating panel was that they would spread evenly across. If we get more, it will spread evenly across the programs.
Okay, thank you.
But we won't know until the application or the information is provided.
So does anybody have any more questions or any more discussion? Okay, so would someone like to make a motion about accepting this funding request?
I didn't want to jump because I did the first one, but I'll make the motion. This is Shane.
Okay, thanks, Shane. So could we have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Melissa. Is anyone opposed?
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank
Oh,
you to you all for making those motions. I just want to point out that many of us on the call are employees of these agencies. So due to conflict of interest, we cannot we cannot make the motions ourselves because that's not appropriate. So thank you for
True.
that. We appreciate it.
Yeah, that's a good point,
Thank
Jay.
you, Beth. I just wanted to give the opportunity for somebody else to do it. So that,
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so Sharika, is that all you had or to cover?
Yes, Alan, that's it.
Okay. Okay, so Jay, you're up.
I just wanted to bring an opportunity to the group, and Sharika and Alan, I'm giving the same information I gave at the last meeting earlier in the week, correct? Okay. There has been a lot of discussion in the last year or two about our continuum of care and homelessness coordination system in our community. And we recognize that this Commission on Ending Homelessness began in Winston-Salem because of the amazing forward-thinking and proactive engagement of our community, but we actually started before the federal continuum of care structure started. So now our community has many, many, many layers that a lot of other communities don't have. So part of a report and analysis and recommendation that was done a year or two ago was to try to streamline a bit. Turns out that we have lots of different meetings that are accomplishing some of the same things. And Sharika, I don't know if you can share that visual that you had, but we have many, many, many different meetings. So one of the recommendations was to streamline some of the committees, maybe cut out some of the duplication and restructure. So the executive committee, my name's Jay. This is my first time at this meeting, so I'm happy to meet you all. My name is Jay Nelson Weaver. I'm with Family Services. We run the interpersonal violence, domestic violence shelter, and we're very involved in helping get people who are fleeing into a safe housing environment. So we're a real active member of the continuum of care. But I serve as the vice chair right now on the Continuum of Care Executive Committee. And what we realize is we have a Commission on Ending Homelessness. We have a full council of the Continuum of Care. We have an operating cabinet. We have an executive committee. And we have lots of other task committees and groups. And there's just a lot of meetings and potentially a lot of duplication and potentially a lot of layers to have to work through to make decisions. And the home base study that was done a couple of years ago, one of the recommendations was we bring our structure locally a little more in line with what many cities have around the country. And so part of that recommended change that the executive committee made was to eliminate the operating cabinet and really have kind of like a three-legged stool. And Sharika put the picture in the chat. So that we have an executive committee, we have Commission on Ending Homelessness, and then we have a full council. And that the executive committee is very active and meets every single month and coordinates with this group and the full council so that we don't duplicate efforts, but that we can more easily align and adapt and shift and respond to what is needed. So we discussed this at the operating cabinet, or maybe it was the full council meeting last week, a couple days ago, wasn't even last week, 2 days ago. And that group had a bunch of questions, but also agreed and thought it was a good idea. And so now we're bringing it to this group to see, this is the idea of a proposed structure. Thank you, Sharika, or whomever put the picture up, to just make us a bit more nimble. So we wanted to bring this to you to see what you think. The decision-making about funding would remain with this group and also be discussed at the full council, but this is the decision-making body, to my understanding. And if you all are comfortable with this proposed restructure, I think the next step would be to go back and really go through our formal written charter to clarify who's in charge of what the officers are, how do we all work together? What's open to everybody? What's a decision just for one small group versus another group to help us be a little less convoluted. So that's some background. Any questions or anything anyone else wants to add who's been part of these conversations?
So basically what this does, Jay, is there was a operating cabinet meeting also that
Right.
this eliminates, right?
Yes.
And so it gets rid of one meeting. And then I know we discussed this full council meeting. Did we end up with it being monthly or quarterly? I know we discussed both.
I think we didn't decide that yet. I
Okay.
think there are a number of opportunities, and another, Ruth, I think is not on this call, but another person who's really active, who's on the executive committee, Ruth with City with Dwellings, she did some background sleuthing and checked into a number of other COCs like
Right. Mhm.
in North Carolina and around the country to look at different structures. Some folks have a large group like the Continuum of Care Full Council that only meets once a quarter. And then the small group like the executive committee and or the commission meet once a month. Some groups have really active committees that are working on specific tasks, and then you flow all of that action together into an agenda. We could align the commission, this group, with the Continuum of Care Council, so those meetings are on the same day back to back, and just stack the agenda. So if they're both public meetings and people are interested, that could potentially, for example, be 1 2-hour meeting where anyone who's interested in this topic comes for this half hour. People in this topic come for that half hour. Like we could make both agendas aligned so people interested in each piece could participate. There are just ways to be more efficient, to flow information and decision making and still meet all of our legal accountability and ethical accountability and get the work done without having to go through so many layers.
So I guess the motion we're looking for is to proceed with fleshing out this setup here, which eliminates the operating cabinet meeting. That's the biggest thing, I guess.
That's the biggest change that I think we're asking for today and asking for your ideas and input about today. And then if that moves forward, then the next big piece I think is to really look at the charter. We have a written charter that's I think about 18 pages long that defines all the roles of which group. So that would then need to be revised and updated. And there's a draft in the works. I think it was last updated a couple of years ago.
Yes, I put all those documents in the chat. And then slide 2 shows the current structure if there's information needed about what it looks like now. So we're getting rid of all of the additional layers into just those 3.
Yeah, so this is slide 2, I think, isn't it, Sharika?
So that's what we have now.
Yeah. So does anybody have any questions or discussion? So we want to go from this to this.
Honestly, I appreciate the clarification of the duties out. I'm not specifically in the industry, but I'm 5 years in. I don't know that I ever really understood where each piece was, what each piece was doing. So I absolutely appreciate the effort, and it looks good.
Great, thank you, Shane. I think the big picture is we want a robust continuum of care and a community-wide open door so that anyone who wants to participate, including certainly people with lived experience, can be part of the solution here. And we don't want a structure that actually gets in the way of that, as opposed to helping make that happen. That's the big picture. So if there are any other questions? All right, can somebody make a motion?
And the motion would be to, let's say, to eliminate the operating cabinet meeting and go to this structure some yet to be determined about meeting dates and times and all that. But so that's what we're looking for. So does anybody want to make a motion?
To clarify, we're making a motion to actually make the change. This is not going out proposed to anybody else, or is anybody else going to be looking at this?
No,
Make the change
Make
the
the
operating cabinet saw it also.
and
And-
agreed,
Yeah,
already agreed.
yes.
I'll motion to make the change.
Thanks. Do we have a second?
Renee, did you give a second? I'm sorry.
Yes, I did. I'm sorry. I second.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So is anyone opposed to this change? Okay, Jay, this is carried then, so now the work really begins, I guess.
Well, thank you, and I do apologize. I need to run. I have my team staff meeting has already started, so I need to run to that. But thank you very much. And the next step, I think we'll be working on the charter and bring that back to everyone at some point as well. So thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye. So is Bo here? I don't think I saw him. Because the next meeting, I guess I need to coordinate with him because I think the next meeting is going to be there.
It's gonna be in person, but I want to check, Al, I need to speak with Larry on how that will work far as recording for WSTV 13.
Oh,
And
okay.
if we need to stay online or how that will look.
Okay. Okay, so you'll just let me know.
Yes.
Okay, so is there any other business or updates or announcements? Okay, well, our next meeting is going to be Thursday, March 21st at 2:30. It could be still online, it could be in person, so we'll let you know that as we get closer to it. So anything else? Any questions?
Shane, can you just stay on for a minute?
Okay, thanks everybody, and we will see you next month. Bye-bye.